You are listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern vitality. If you are seeking to reconnect with your innate vibrancy, you're in the right place. I'm Emily Davis, a seasoned holistic esthetician and herbalist. Join me as we unlock the secrets of ancient skincare practices, explore the beauty of seasonal and nature-based living, herbalism, and true holistic well-being for you and the broader ecosystem. Please remember that the information I share in this podcast is based on my personal and professional experiences and is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not individualized skincare advice, nor is it medical advice. I encourage you to take charge of your own health decisions and listen to your body, seeking out the resources and professionals that best support your wellness journey. Welcome in. This is episode 30. And when I started this podcast at the beginning of this year, I told myself that it's okay if I just totally suck at doing this for the first 30 episodes, and that my only job is to just consistently put in the reps, show up 30 times. And now I guess it's time to really start honing the craft a little bit more. So thank you for being along for the journey. I'm so grateful that the success that the show's already had so far. I have an episode that I'm really pumped about today. I want to talk about stress and how plants can be really helpful during times of both acute stress or anxiety, but even for long-term help as well. And of course, I'm going to talk about some other adjustments that can be made because just like skincare, lifestyle is the foundation and herbs are more of an icing on top of that foundation. You can't out-herb an unsupportive lifestyle, unfortunately, which can feel kind of weird because we're used to just taking a pill to fix something, but herbs don't really work like that. They're not just weak pharmaceuticals. And this thought pattern is one that can make many people come to the conclusion that herbs don't really quote unquote work, or that they are just weak pharmaceuticals. And I would invite you to take that thought pattern that may be something you just grew up with. If you're part of Western culture, there's a high probability that that's the mindset that you have been conditioned with. And I would invite you to just tweak that a little bit. I was recently talking to a client during a virtual consultation, which I am now offering virtual skincare consultations for new clients. That's the only way that I'm taking new clients currently. And if that's something you're interested in, you can find the information on my website. But I was recently talking with a client during a virtual consultation, and we were just talking about the role that stress plays in our skin health. And I was talking about how it's not really stress that's the main issue, but it's really how we are able to cope with stressful situations. And that's what affects our health and our wellness. And because our skin is a reflection of this, our skin. It's not uncommon for me to hear, oh, my breakouts are just from stress. And I would invite you to take that thought, and rather than it be like, oh, well, there's nothing I can do. We live in stressful times. That's just the way it is. And maybe invite in a little bit more empowerment. Because yes, we do live in stressful times, and that is true. But times have also always felt stressful. I'm reading The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna right now, and it's about the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. And every time I read about this period of time, it gives me a fresh perspective that there always stressful times. It's not unique to our generation, although it can certainly feel that way because we're constantly shown every problem across the globe at all times. And there is a vested interest in making you feel fear and making you feel high stress and high anxiety. And I just think it's important that we recognize this so that we can make changes with what we're consuming and know that that does affect our stress level as well. So stress affects our skin in a few key ways, and it's all about how our body reacts when we're feeling tense or anxious or overwhelmed. So the first way is through hormone release. When we're stressed, our body releases cortisol. Cortisol is, of course, part of our fight or flight response, and it's very helpful in short bursts. Cortisol isn't all bad, but too much over long periods of time can cause problems because high levels of cortisol can lead to increased oil production in the skin, which can cause breakouts. Chronic stress and chronically elevated cortisol levels can prompt the immune system to release pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are signaling molecules that promote inflammation. This can make existing conditions like acne or eczema, rosacea, psoriasis worse, and it can also cause your skin to become more sensitive. So if you're finding that you're more sensitive than you've been in the past, stress may be a culprit there, or stress coping techniques may be a culprit there. Stress also increases the production of free radicals, which can damage cells and lead to oxidative stress. Free radicals are unstable molecules that can damage your skin by stealing electrons from healthy cells, and this leads to that process I just spoke about called oxidative stress. So what happens when we have oxidative stress is that collagen can be damaged and broken down, and we need collagen because this is what keeps our skin really smooth and firm. Stress can also have an effect on our barrier function. So our skin has a natural barrier that seals moisture in, and it's protective for our skin. But the release of cortisol and this increase of inflammation can weaken our barrier by impairing its natural functions. It can disrupt the production of essential lipids that are called ceramides, and these ceramides are super important for sealing that moisture in. And so this can look like red, dull, dry skin that's just kind of lackluster. If there's any type of flakiness, anytime we have breakouts, that's a barrier dysfunction. Anytime we have dermatitis or eczema, that's a barrier dysfunction. And so stress can be a huge culprit there as well. It can also slow down our skin's natural cell turnover and our skin's regeneration process. And this means that damaged skin cells are replaced more slowly, which leads to prolonged healing time from wounds or breakouts or any other skin issues where our skin needs to heal. Stress can actually prolong that. It can decrease the production of collagen. Stress can constrict blood vessels, which reduce the flow of blood to our skin cells. And this is going to limit the delivery of oxygen and nutrients, which is also going to slow down the healing process. The oxidative damage that I just spoke about also makes it more difficult for the skin to repair itself as the cells that are responsible for healing are weakened or destroyed by that oxidative damage. Now that we've talked about how stress affects our skin, it can promote breakouts, it can promote dryness and sensitivity, it can slow down wound healing. Let's talk about the different types of stresses or anxiety that we can experience. And stress and anxiety are actually different. Stress is the body's natural response to a perceived threat or a challenge. It's typically a reaction to external situations such as work deadlines or financial issues or major life changes. Stress is often temporary and it goes away once the stressor is removed or once it's managed. And so physical symptoms of stress include headaches, muscle tension, a racing heart, irritability, frustration, anger. And stress can sometimes be positive. It can motivate you to take action or solve problems. So that type of stress is more of an acute stress that can be beneficial. But chronic stress is really what's harmful to our health. And then anxiety is a feeling of fear, unease, a feeling of worry that can be triggered by stress, but it often persists even in the absence of the immediate stressor. So anxiety is more internal and it may not be tied to a specific event or situation. I think of just like feelings of impending doom is what I think of when I think of anxiety. Anxiety can be chronic. Again, it can linger after the stressor is gone. It's like a constant or reoccurring feeling. And emotional symptoms like excessive worry, nervousness, that feeling of dread. And then we also can have physical symptoms like rapid breathing, difficulty sleeping, increased heart rate, general restlessness. And again, there can be a purpose. Mild anxiety can alert you to potential dangers, or it can be your intuition speaking to you. However, excessive or chronic anxiety can interfere with our life, and we want to definitely help to support that. There's different types of stresses. We have emotional stress that arises from emotions like anger or sadness even. This can look like relationship conflicts or grieving the loss of a loved one. We can have physical stress, which is like overexertion during exercise or injury or lack of sleep. We can have environmental stress, which is like noise pollution. Oh my gosh, there was construction outside of my treatment room for about 6 months, the room where I see my clients, and it was causing so much stress. It was driving me insane, and I'm so glad it's almost over. But that's a real thing. Exposure to extreme weather is environmental stress. Exposure to air pollution. We can have occupational stress. So this can look like job insecurity or conflict with coworkers or a high workload. We can have social stress, which looks like social anxiety or conflicts in our relationships or peer pressure. We can have financial stress, which is like debt or unexpected expenses. There's also technological stress, which I think many of us can relate to. That can look like information overload, constant connectivity, always feeling like you need to check your phone, checking your phone first thing in the morning, scrolling for hours. This all causes stress on our bodies. So now that we know that there's all of these differences in the stress that we feel, the reason I talk about that is because I think it's easy to not really tap into what exactly is stressful, or that's what it feels like when I'm talking to people about their skin. Like, I just have general stress. I don't know what to do. It just is what it is. And I would invite you to tap into exactly what the stress trigger is. Maybe there are environmental stresses that you're not even thinking about that are affecting your skin. So what can we do about it? As I said, stress is part of the human experience, and we also have the agency to make choices every day that can help our nervous system to be more flexible. It's often talked about that you need to regulate your nervous system. I sometimes get stressed thinking about all of the posts that I'm seeing on Instagram that I need to regulate my nervous system. But I like to think of it like I need to work to make my nervous system flexible. I saw a post the other day that was like, I want to rebrand the nervous system as the sensory input system so that she can stop being so nervous. So one of my favorite things to do, and not necessarily in the moment is it my favorite thing to do, but after it's over for stress management, is to engage in hormetic stress activities. So this is like a short burst of intense stress that's actually going to make you feel better. It's exposing your body to controlled stressors that stimulate physiological responses leading to improved stress tolerance. So this is about making it more flexible. It's about making you able to cope with the stress that is out of your control a little bit better. Examples of this are exercise. Daily movement is so incredibly important, and doing things that maybe feel outside of your comfort zone. Lifting heavy, going for a swim is such a good one that I've been really into lately. So doing the things, doing the hard things. Another example is sauna. Cold plunging is an example of hormetic stress, and this is a whole topic. It's not right for all people. There's definitely some controversy. Traditional Chinese medicine does not recommend cold plunging at all because the cold is going to support stagnation. There's lots of opinions out there, and what's right for one person's body is not right for another's. And I think that there's just more to the story than good versus bad. But moral of the story is that cold plunging is an example of hormetic stress. Certain type of breath work, like Wim Hof breath, these activities are inducing a mild stress response that are helping your body to adapt and strengthen its resilience to the other forms of stress. So next is meditation. This is going to work by activating that parasympathetic nervous system. Regular meditation practice has been shown to reduce cortisol production. Meditation can increase gray matter density in our brain areas linked to emotional regulation. And additionally, meditation actually shrinks the amygdala, which is our lizard brain. It's the brain's center for fear and stress response, which is going to make us less reactive to stressors. Meditation also boosts levels of GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that promotes relaxation and reduces anxiety. It can foster a greater sense of self-awareness, and it can also help us to identify stress triggers and develop better coping strategies. Emerging research even suggests that meditation may even influence our gene expression, particularly for those involved in inflammation and stress response. So that's really cool. That's a big deal. Okay, next up is healthy eating. I'm not going to get really into this because it's a charged topic, right? You know what foods make you spiral, and if you don't, that's a really good place to start. Start taking notes on what you're eating. Okay, when I eat a lot of sugar or when I consume caffeine, it affects my mental health. I'm personally really big on whole foods. I try very hard to avoid ultra processed foods whenever possible. I'm a big fan of cooking for yourself or home cooked food. I think it's so important. And then also considering food stress, which I have lived with for a very long time. And again, I don't want to get super deep into this right here, but what I will say is block out the noise on social media. The mental illness around food is so rampant. There's so much fear around food, and I'm not a big proponent of like all foods are good, because there are foods that aren't supportive to our bodies. That is true. But there is just so much over the top food fear, and there's a lot of stress that can come from being afraid of food, and I definitely suggest looking at that if that's something you're experiencing currently. Quality sleep is going to improve our resilience to stress. The best thing I can tell you here is establishing a regular sleep routine, creating a restful environment, making it calm and cool in your bedroom, having a routine that you can ground into, and avoiding screens before bedtime, which is so much easier said than done. But once you get into the habit, which is something I'm constantly working on, it will improve your sleep quality in such a big way. Quality sleep starts with your morning routine, of course, and I'm a big fan of having a morning menu and an evening menu. And so I just have the things that I can choose from, and I pick 3 for my morning routine, and I don't let myself look at my phone before I get that morning sunlight in my eyes, and I do some of my morning routine. And then same at nighttime, I have 3 things from my list of all of the different options for my evening routine that I choose from before bed. Time management is so important for stress. Time management can help reduce feelings of being overwhelmed, and it can ensure that you handle your tasks more efficiently. This is a large contributor to most of the stress and overwhelm in my life personally. I'm still trying to figure it out, but I read this book that I loved called Essentialism by Greg McKeown last year, and I think I'll read it again this year. It was one of my favorite books I've ever read. And he talked about creating buffers. The way he explained it in the book, he talked about when you're driving and you leave space between you and the car in front of you, unless you're the teenage boy who was 2 inches from the back of my car on the highway the other day during rush hour. But normally you leave room between you and the car in front of you to potentially prepare yourself for the unexpected short stop or whatever it may be. For me, when I'm practicing this and doing a good job, I try to do something as early as I can to prepare for any unexpected contingencies that can pop up. And I always just think of that book and how he talked about the driving, and I'm like, okay, put my clothes out. That's going to put me 6 feet behind the car in front of me in case they stop so I don't crash in front of them. Okay, start this blog 2 weeks ahead of time. That's going to give me that 6 feet of room between me and the car in front of me. And I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's made a huge difference in my life and the amount of stress that I can offset for myself. Next in these foundations is social support. Connecting with friends and family is, of course, going to provide emotional support and can help you cope better with stress. Community is just so important, and it's so overlooked. Social interactions and emotional support can stimulate the release of oxytocin, which is a hormone associated with bonding and stress reduction. Social interactions can reduce the activity of the sympathetic nervous system. And not only that, but just discussing stressors with others who have had similar experiences can help you to gain perspective and reframe the situation and develop coping strategies that maybe they've used. It can help to plug into a community or create a community just for practical resources, for assistance, for information, or even physical help with tasks, which can alleviate any overwhelm that you feel about your responsibilities. Next up is rest. Laying on your phone or even in front of the TV on the couch is not rest. Rest can be active. Taking a walk is a form of rest. Cooking is a form of rest for many people. Painting. I've been taking drawing lessons on YouTube. I just put in how to draw, and I've been learning how to draw better. And then rest can also be very passive, like taking a warm bath. But the thing is, you need to be able to give your mind and your body time to truly rest. Professional help is, of course, something that can be very helpful. Talk therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, these can be very supportive in your ability to cope with stress. All right, so now that we've talked about the foundations, which is what really you should be thinking about before you start thinking about herbs, I of course want to dive into the plants. I want to talk about how herbs and plants can help, but I want to approach this conversation with some mindfulness. I would invite you to consider a relationship with the plant that you're working with, a recognition that this plant was a living being, it has a spirit, and you can create a sort of kinship with the plant. Two books that I highly recommend for exploring this idea further and exploring relationships with plants further is The Secret Life of Trees and Braiding Sweetgrass. There's a tendency to approach medicine in a very extractive way that's a bit mindless. And again, it's not wrong. It's how many of us have grown up, but it's going to feel so much better to approach plant medicine in a softer way, with more curiosity, with more reverence for the being that you are forming this relationship with. I want to do more content and messaging around what this looks like, but I think a great place to start is just that recognition and talking about that recognition. Okay, so I have picked out a few very helpful plants, and I will talk about the ways that I consume the herbs. So this is generally going to be tea or tincture. When I work with an herb for tea, recognizing that just drinking tea in itself is stress management, the ritual of making and drinking a warm cup of tea. And you can purchase an herb for tea online, either at Mountain Rose Herbs or Star West Botanicals. I would get a very small amount to try it first. You can get the cut and sifted plant on both of these websites. And what that looks like is just typing the name. So linden is one of the plants I'm going to talk about. Put linden into the search bar and you're going to see a picture of herbs, a cut up leaf basically in a pile, and that's the cut and sifted herb, and you would use this as a loose leaf tea. Big fan of loose leaf tea over here. you're going to get much better quality, and you're going to want to use much more than you would get from a tea bag at the grocery store. And so if you're interested in the herbs that I'm talking about today, this is the route that I highly suggest that you take when you're purchasing them. The rule of thumb with like a leaf or a flower, any of the above ground aerial parts of the plant, is to do 1 tablespoon of plant material to 1 cup of water. So I generally double that and do 2 tablespoons to 2 cups of water. You're going to use hot water from the kettle and let it steep for around 20 minutes, and then you're going to strain it, and you will then enjoy it. You can strain it through a mesh sieve. You can use an herb basket. They make little tea baskets that you just place in your cup. I really like those. I use them often. You could also put everything in a French press and then press the herbs out. What you have afterwards is called the mark, and you can compost that. I usually just throw it into my garden. Definitely something that doesn't need to go into the trash. And then with a root or bark, you're going to take a similar ratio, so that 1 tablespoon to 1 cup, and you're going to actually simmer it for 20 to 40 minutes and then strain. Everything I'm talking about today is a leaf, but examples of a root or bark would be ashwagandha is a root, cinnamon is a bark, and so that would get that simmering treatment. And then if you're purchasing a tincture, Mountain Rose Herbs carries tinctures. Herb Farm is great, so that's herb, PHARM. Gaia Herbs has tinctures, and then my favorite is Wish Gardens. They are local to me here in Colorado. All right, so let's dive into the herbs themselves. Passionflower is number 1. Before you do anything else, go Google passionflower because it looks like it is from a cartoon. It's so cute and so beautiful and so unique. I'm starting with this one because it's the one that I grab for acute panic. Like, I'm freaking out. I could use a sedative. I reach for passionflower tincture. I like tinctures when I'm looking for a quicker action, or if I'm out and about. Tea isn't always an option to make, and so I often will keep some type of passionflower tincture in my bag just in case. But passionflower is also in my sleep tea that I drink in the evenings to wind down. Passionflower is a class of herbs called a nervine, and it's actually a relaxant nervine. Nervines are a category of herbs that support our nervous system. They're often used to either calm or strengthen or restore balance to the nervous system, and there are different types of nervines. There can be a stimulating nervine, but the ones that we'll be talking about today are relaxant nervines. Passionflower is a sedative type herb. It can modulate GABA in the brain, which is a neurotransmitter that inhibits excessive neural activity. And so this means that it can help to promote relaxation and reduce anxiety. Passionflower is when you're feeling emotionally fragile or emotionally exhausted. Like I said, I grab for it when I'm just like kind of spinning out. I really like it also when I'm having like monkey brain and I can't stop thinking about one thing and the thinking isn't doing anything for me. I'm just overthinking. Passionflower is what I grab for then. Next is motherwort. Motherwort is armor. It's the lion-hearted one. It's very bitter, so I prefer it as a tincture. The Latin botanical name for motherwort is Leonurus cardiaca, which translates to lion-hearted. Motherwort helps you when you need to feel more lion-hearted. Often worked with to support emotional courage, which can help you face your fear or anxiety with a sense of inner strength. Chamomile. Chamomile is so underrated. I think of chamomile for the kind of stress that gives you the bubble guts. I used to have this job that was so ridiculous and stressful for no reason at all, because I had this boss who was incredibly knee-jerk reactive, and everyone else around would be taken down that knee-jerk reactive path along with that person. And this would just send me straight into fight or flight. I was always reeling whenever this would happen. And I remember for the first time in my life, stress or anxiety affecting my digestion. The reason that stress can affect our digestion is because our body is preparing for immediate action. We need to run or fight this situation, and this is going to speed up the gastrointestinal motility in the body, which is going to help rapidly clear the digestive tract, which is going to reduce energy and resources needed to digest food when we're facing a stressful situation. So it's so interesting that our ancient bodies react in this ancient way to something that we can laugh about years later, but in the moment when you're having this bubble guts from the stress, chamomile is so helpful. So chamomile is also a relaxant nervine, but chamomile also has an affinity for the digestive system. It's anti-inflammatory and then also antispasmodic, and that can help with soothing the digestive tract. And it can relieve symptoms like bloating, gas, cramping. It's a very gentle remedy for digestive discomfort. Chamomile, when steeped for longer than 40 minutes, so maybe you leave it to steep overnight, actually becomes quite bitter. And so it can have the benefits of a bitter herb as well, which is to support the digestive tract. It can help to support the liver by increasing bile production. So I love chamomile for its ability to both work for the nervous system, but then also get to work for soothing the digestive system as well. Next is linden. Sweet little linden, just a hug in a mug. Linden is there to make you feel like everything is going to be okay. I drink linden tea almost every day. She just feels like an old friend who is safe and reliable. Linden is also a relaxant nervine that has sedative properties. I would say within about 10 minutes of drinking the tea, I can usually feel the hard edges soften, and it just feels like the gentlest exhale. You can see linden trees all over. They're so beautiful. They have this gorgeous fragrant scent. It tastes really good. It's a really wonderful way to dip your toe in. To get a little bit of linden and start making tea with it is very gentle, calm, and safe. But of course, as with every herb, please be sure to do your research thoroughly to be sure that this herb is appropriate for your body and for consumption for you. The last one that I want to talk about today, which this is not an exhaustive list, is rose. Rose is heart protection. This is for when you need softness for yourself, but you also need your heart to feel protected. It's such a beautiful one for when grief is involved in your stress. I love rose as a tea. But I don't suggest that you do rose alone because it will probably taste like potpourri. I also really like rose as a glycerite. A glycerite incorporates glycerin instead of alcohol. Rose can also be a wonderful honey infusion, so rose petals added to honey. And do note that this is not rose from the grocery store. I'm talking about wild rose. You would never want to make a tincture from or add petals from a grocery store rose into honey because they're super toxic and sprayed with all kinds of stuff that you don't really want to ingest. Wooden Spoon Herbs has a really lovely rose blend in glycerin called Rose Colored Glasses, which is really lovely because it also has passionflower and oat tops, which I haven't talked about them, but milky oat seed or oat tops actually help to repair frayed nerves. Very supportive to the nervous system. And then hawthorn, which is also another beautiful heart protection plant. And then Organic Olivia has one called Flowers for My Love, which is a glycerite with rose and passionflower. I love both of them. They're both highly effective. You could also incorporate rose essential oil during times of grief. Rubbing rose essential oil over the heart is such a beautiful practice. Incorporating a rose hydrosol in your skincare can be so uplifting. Rose is the highest vibrational plant, and so when we're applying rose to our body or ingesting rose, we're actually raising our own vibrational frequency. Rose is such a beautiful heart support and one of my absolute favorite plants to interact with. All right, a rundown of the herbs that we talked about once again include passionflower, motherwort, chamomile, linden, and rose. I chose these because they are very gentle but powerful. They are generally known as safe. I will say motherwort should not be consumed during pregnancy or breastfeeding or those with heart rate or blood thinning medications. Again, always look up if an herb has contraindications that you are included in. One of my favorite places to research plants is Herbal Academy has a membership called the Herbarium, and they have monographs within that database that talk about the contraindications. Another great place is Golden Poppy Herbs. They have many monographs or materia medica on the plants. I hope that this has been helpful. I hope that there is maybe one plant that you have not tried before that you want to try to incorporate into your life to help yourself in your flexibility with coping with stress. I will be back next week, and until then, be well. You've been listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality. If you liked what you heard today, consider giving me a 5-star rating. It helps other people just like you find the show. You can shop products and find all of my offerings on my website, stratumaesthetics.com, and follow me on my social channels at Stratum Aesthetics.